Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to take a look under the hood of human society to decode the absolute foundational mechanics of how our world operates financially. Every single day, you and I make choices, and so do massive governments. But what's actually driving those decisions? Well, today we're moving from your everyday personal dilemmas all the way up to global economic strategies to figure out exactly what makes the whole engine run. Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question from our source material. Have billionaires like Mukesh Ambani or Bill Gates actually overcome scarcity? Now, it's super tempting to just say, well, yeah, obviously, right? I mean, they have more money than they could ever spend in a dozen lifetimes. But here's the catch. Even they face scarcity. Because while they might have boundless financial resources, they are strictly limited by time. A person can spend an hour writing a new software solution, or they can spend that same hour outlining guidelines for their executives. They can do one job, but literally no one can do both at the exact same millisecond. And this proves a pretty universal truth. Scarcity isn't just about cash, it's about the fundamental hard limits on our means. All right, here's our mental roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The universal problem of scarcity. 2. Meet the economic entities. 3. The factors of production. 4. The central problems of an economy. 5. The production possibility curve. And finally, 6. How we actually allocate our resources. Okay, starting off with section 1, the universal problem, scarcity. Let's meet the ultimate boss of our economic game. So what is it exactly? Well, scarcity is simply a situation where the resources we have available fall completely short of what we require. And this applies whether we're talking about a single individual or the entire global economy. It's this unyielding, constant tension between our ever-increasing wants and the very limited resources we have to satisfy them. Look, human beings are wired to constantly improve our standard of living, right? To explore the unknown, to try new things. Our wants are, for all practical purposes, unlimited. But the goods and services that nature and our own labor provide, they are just never going to be enough to satisfy all of those wants. Picture this for a second. Imagine you've got just a single 100 rupee note in your pocket. You might really want to buy a book, grab a quick meal, or maybe get a movie ticket. And let's say each of those costs exactly 100 rupees. You obviously can't buy all three. This hits the nail on the head regarding scarcity. Scarce means always have alternative uses, and that right there is what forces us to make choices. We absolutely cannot waste resources. We have to economize them, which just means making sure we're putting them to their most important uses. Moving right along to section 2. Meet the economic entities. Now that we understand the core problem, who's actually fighting this battle every day? Economists call these players economic entities. Basically, they are the active decision makers in our system. This includes you, acting as an individual consumer, your entire household, a massive multinational business firm, and even the various organs of the state. Whether they're acting as savers, investors, buyers, or suppliers, it's the daily, minute-by-minute decisions of these specific entities that make up the working of an economy. Their choices literally determine how healthy and efficient the entire system is. Which brings us to section 3, the factors of production. So, what tools are these entities actually using to combat scarcity? We group all of our productive inputs into 4 main buckets, known as the factors of production. First up, we have land, which covers all the free gifts of nature, like soil, water, and minerals. Second is labor, which is all the human, physical, and mental effort we put into things. Third, we've got capital. These are the produced means of production. And finally, number 4 is entrepreneurship. That's the risk-bearing, organizing brainpower that pulls the other 3 factors together to actually make things happen. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. There's a big distinction between these factors. Land and labor, those are our primary factors. Trying to produce anything is just totally impossible without them. But capital is a bit different because it's a man-made resource. While land is a free gift from nature, capital definitely isn't. Actually, economists like to think of it as concealed or crystallized labor. When humans put in the grueling effort to build machinery, pave roads, or construct bridges, they are literally creating capital that will be used for future production. It's like storing up past work to make tomorrow's work easier. All right, on to section 4, central problems of an economy. Having these limited tools is what forces us into some pretty intense strategic choices. Because we don't have endless tools, every single society has to figure out a hierarchy of fundamental decisions. First, what to produce. Because remember, choosing to produce more of one thing means pulling resources away from something else. Next, how to produce it.
which highlights the choice of techniques and technologies we use. And finally, for whom to produce? How do we fairly or effectively distribute the final goods among our citizens?
But wait, it doesn't stop with those core three. Societies also face a few other massive balancing acts. We have to balance current consumption, what we want to use right now, against saving and investing so we can actually have economic growth in the future. We also have to decide how to split resources between private goods and public goods. Plus, every economy has to figure out how to boost the supply of what we call merit goods. These are things like education or healthcare, where consuming them is deeply beneficial, not just for the individual, but for the entire society as a whole. Next up, Section 5, the production possibility curve. Economists love a good visual to show the hard limits of these choices. Think of the production possibility curve, or the PPC, as an economy's absolute speed limit. If we assume that our resources and our technology are fixed, this curve represents the absolute maximum possible output of two different goods. And because the curve slopes downward from left to right, it illustrates a really harsh reality. When an economy is fully maxed out in using all its resources, if we want to produce more of one good, we absolutely must sacrifice some quantity of the other. There's just no way around it. So the takeaway here is that if we are operating right on that curve, we are fully and efficiently employed. We're maximizing our potential. But what if we fall anywhere below that curve? Well, that indicates the painful reality of underutilized resources. Any point below that line highlights inefficiency, or worse, unemployment in the economy. It means we could be producing more without having to sacrifice anything at all, but our system just isn't running the way it should. But hey, here is the good news. We aren't stuck with that exact same curve forever. The curve can actually shift. If we manage to increase our resources, say by growing our labor force, building more capital goods, or inventing better technology, that entire curve shifts outward to the right, and that is a game changer. It breaks the old limits and paves the way for true economic growth, meaning we can actually produce more of everything all at once. Finally, Section 6, how we allocate resources. Let's see how different societies actually write their rule books to manage this whole balancing act. We basically have three main playbooks for dealing with scarcity. First, there's the capitalist, or free market economy. Here, the means of production are privately owned, and decisions are driven entirely by the wild interaction of demand, supply, and market prices. On the total opposite end, we have the socialist, or centrally controlled economy. In this system, all the means of production are owned by the state, and the government makes the big allocation decisions. And then, sitting right in the middle, we have the mixed economy, which blends shared decision-making between private individuals and government authorities. Now, it's super important to note that most of the real world operates in that middle ground. Even in a mixed system where private entities own capital and make a ton of independent decisions, it is never a total free-for-all. The government still heavily steps in. Private businesses operate under a massive web of regulations. We're talking price controls, subsidies, taxes, quotas, and labor laws. All of this is designed to help gently, or sometimes not so gently, steer the economy toward whatever objectives that society has chosen. So, to wrap up this explainer, I want you to take all these concepts and apply them to the real world. Look around at the businesses, the government policies, and the markets in your own life. Ask yourself, based on everything we've just uncovered about scarcity, decision-making, and the central problems of production, which economic system is really pulling the strings of resource allocation in your country right now? Think about it, keep questioning everything, and I'll see you in the next explainer.